Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining Rasheed and I this morning. We're recording it quite early in the morning, first thing. My name is Soila. I'm the founding editor of the divorcemagazine.co.uk. And that's a magazine that is an online magazine. And it has got a lot of information on all things divorce, whether you're looking for legal advice, whether you're looking for help with moving on from a broken relationship, well-being, and especially with children and what happens with children during and after divorce. There's a lot of content on there. If you're struggling in any way with your children before, during, and after the divorce, please do get in touch with me. I am a child therapist and a parenting practitioner, and you can contact me on soila at thedivorcemagazine.co.uk. So today I'm so happy to have Rasheed, whom I met many years ago, interviewed a few years ago as well, and we have him here today with so much pleasure. Hi, Rasheed.
Thank you very much. It's a delight to be here. The coach has arrived.
Yay! Would you tell us who you are and what it is that you do, Rasheed?
Sure. I'm Rasheed Ogunlaru. I'm a life coach, I'm a motivational speaker, and I'm a business and corporate coach. So in plain English, I really help people move ahead in their lives, their careers, and their relationships. So I work with people who, whether it is that they think about where next in my career and so on. I work with lots of people who are wanting to move ahead in terms of relationships, and that starts often with the relationship with themselves as well as others. But I also work with organisations and teams of people who are thinking about or starting up their own businesses. And just so that people know, my first background, funny enough, was in media and PR in terms of communications and so on. Okay. And then my second career was around, I was a singer and performer, but I was also a Samaritan volunteer and a co-director of the Samaritan. So I also understand what it's like when people are going through dark and difficult times. And divorce is one of those times that can be very, very difficult and challenging. But I work with all sorts of people, from members of the public, high achievers, chief executives, pop stars, you name it, people in the public eye, and people like you and I who are just wanting to move ahead in their lives, their careers, and their relationships, and be authentic to themselves.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much for that introduction, Rasheed. So now what I was thinking we could talk about is, because January is basically known as January Jilt. This is the time where a lot of solicitors, family solicitors, get a lot of inquiries to do with divorce. Unfortunately, and it comes straight after, Christmas, big holidays, when probably people realize, actually, you know what, I don't want to be here this time next year. So I thought with you and the work that you do, we were just discussing that maybe what we could discuss are endings and beginnings. And yeah.
That's absolutely right. I think you're so right, Soila. This time of the year, January, the start of the year, is a time where people are, on the one hand, people do realise if things have come to an end in terms of that, but they're also wanting to make a new beginning, or to make to cut things and then to move further forward. And what's interesting is, often that I find as a coach is, of course, as you just said, the period just before Christmas time can be a hugely challenging time, because people are thrown together for a long period of time. All sorts of stuff is thrown up in terms of relationships, in terms of the past, historically, and so on. Families together, relationships, and so on. So often things come to a head, and people often realise what is working, what's not working, and it can be a very challenging time. And if there were the niggles and problems and so on, it's likely to be exacerbated then, and that's no surprise where those things come to a head by January, where people realise, actually, you know what, that's it, and it's time to sort this out and to move forward. So I'm looking forward to talking about both the ending side of things and then the beginnings, because sometimes at this time people can't possibly see an end to the conflict, let alone a life, a new life for themselves.
Let's talk about the endings, because people who would be listening to it are probably exactly at that stage where their relationship is coming to an end, whether it's a long-term one, short-term. A relationship, is a relationship, and coming to an end can cause a lot of anxiety and pain. What would you say to somebody who's right now either considering divorce or is already in the process of divorce ending?
I think the first thing is, I would say, just be mindful that it is a difficult time. If you're feeling upset, distraught, uncertain, those are very natural feelings to be felt with. Our whole lives are built around relationships, our relationship to ourselves, to loved ones, and so on. So when any kind of relationship comes to an end, it can be difficult, it can be very painful, and you can feel all sorts of emotions based on that. I think one of the things that I would say, and this may be difficult to hear at this particular time, and so on, but it's worth us bearing in mind that in life and in relationships, there can be so much pressure on us that this is how our life should look and how our relationships should look, and that these relationships should last forever. I look at relationships a bit like a train journey. You know, there are going to be some relationships where you're going to be lucky that you're going to be going that entire course of that journey with the other, because you're heading in the same direction. But there are going to be many train journeys in which people will get off at different kind of stops, because you're going on your own life journey and they're going on in their own life journey. The one person that you're stuck with for your entire life is you. So you've got to take time out for yourself. And I know for many people, it may have been very, very difficult to even come to this point to realize, you know what, this relationship doesn't work. But your own well-being and the well-being of the other, and as you highlighted at the beginning of this talk, the well-being, if there are children, involved, and other relatives who might be close to you all, are really important. So I always say one of the things that might be useful here is that there are three things going on in a relationship. There's you, there's the other person, and there is the relationship in between. And the key thing is, how is that you can honour all three? You, what is it you need? Where are you at? Is it time for you to move forward? Are you ready to move forward? How do you protect yourself? Sometimes, you know, things can have got very, very unpleasant. There is the other person, their life, and letting them go and move forward. And then there's the relationship and that relationship. And it's very important to honour all three of those spaces. And if the third space, the relationship, also involves children, so on, you need to be mindful about that. But it's a good way to help you to begin to briefly separate the three things. Think, how do I take care of myself? How do I let that person think? And what are the things in the middle that we need to kind of begin to take care of? But know that this is a natural part of life, and there can be such huge social pressures that you should be like this, you should be in a relationship, and so there's going to be all sorts of feelings that men and women are going to be feeling, and some of them, those will be socially induced pressures on them being men or women, are how it is that they should feel. But there is no ideal relationship. There's no script of life, how life is going to pan out. There are no certainties of life. So that's the first thing to say as we begin to look at how it is that you look at where you are, what you want, and how you can begin to address the divorce and move forward. Depending how it is you want to go about. And there are options. You know, there are options. It doesn't also need to be painful. It doesn't necessarily need to go to court. Right. I used to be the communications manager for a family mediation kind of service back in the day. So there's all sorts of ways. It doesn't need to be bitter.
Yes.
And so this time, by you just gently being aware of that and giving yourself perhaps time alone where you can, you know, go through some of these different emotions, can help you to decide how it is you want to go on this journey. Is it over? Yeah. Is it broken? Do you feel it's fixable? Do you want to fix it? Do you feel you're able to fix it yourself? Do you need some help? Are you wanting to battle? Are you wanting to be amicable about it? These are some of the questions that you need to ask yourself at this moment.
As the person, because thanks for that, Rasheed. One of the things that we've come to realize is the emotions that we go through as the leaver and the one who's been left are very different. Because the leaver has been leaving, obviously, for a while before they uttered the words, "I'm leaving." So they are a few steps ahead of the person who's being left. Now, for the person who's being left, it can come as a huge shock sometimes that, you know, what do you mean? It's not working. I thought we were happy. Or, yes, I was expecting this, but still the other person is a few steps ahead. That can cause a lot of anger and bitterness and resentment from the person who's being left towards the other party. Is there any kind of advice you would be able to give the person who's being left in terms of managing that resentment, that anger that can then cause a whole explosion in the divorce process?
Yeah, that's such a good point. That is absolutely true. You know, that is often the reality, isn't it? That the two people will be in a different place. Yeah. Perhaps one person is ready to move on. Maybe they've already moved on, yes, either emotionally in terms of perhaps even other relationships, or just in their own mind. Mm. And then there's the person who's been left, for whom this can be completely new. I think it's really important to give yourself, first of all, just that time and space. Because it may well be a big shock. There may well be immediately where you feel numb, you don't feel able to do anything, and that's very, very natural emotions. And there, it's incredibly difficult, and there's nothing that's probably going to stop you feeling the emotions that it is that you feel. I think the thing is to know, I think there's a few things here. Know that as and when and if you want it and need it, there is support out there from counsellors and therapists, experts like yourself, through to good friends and family. Be mindful about who you know is genuinely going to be supportive.
Your support system,
because you really do need the people who are very supportive of you. So do be mindful about that, who you reach out to and what kind of support it is that you need and when you do need that. But I think that also what can happen at this time, Sol, is that there can be a feeling of kind of guilt and blame. I would say don't spend too much time blaming and beating yourself up, because at some point you need to move forward, and it's going to be easier to move forward if you're not battered and bruised by beating yourself up. This is one of the things that often happens in life, that blame, internalizing, it's me, it's my fault, or so on, and one may have even been led to feel it's your own fault. I think it's important to recognize that sometimes these things just happen. And of course, there may well be things that both parties could have done, more perhaps one than other sometimes, but that is how it is. So I think that knowing also that sometimes feelings from anger, feeling numb, to acceptance can happen. I would say as a coach, there's a word that is often very, very misunderstood and given a bad name, and that's the word acceptance. Acceptance is a word that people think is being passive, because if I come to a point to accept, okay, this person wants to move on in their life, that somehow I'm being passive or I'm given up or what have you. Acceptance is the moment with anything that's happening, be it a bereavement, be it a situation of being made redundant at work. It's a moment that has at some moment got to happen, because that's the moment where I'm at one with what's actually going on. So what acceptance is actually saying, okay, this is actually what's happening. I may not agree with it at all. Might be angry about it, might be upset about it, I might be bereft and not know what to do about it. But that moment of accepting this seems to be the events that are happening is very, very, it's the beginning of being, it's the beginning of being empowered. It's the beginning of thinking, okay, where am I actually at with this? What help do I need? What are the things that we need to put in place? How am I being affected? How might they be affected? What things do we need to do? So I think that moment of acceptance and that embracing of yourself and accepting of the situation is an important moment.
That's when you started talking about acceptance, I thought to myself, when you said some people think acceptance is passive, but the acceptance itself of saying, okay, it is what it is. He is leaving. She is leaving, can bring up such powerful emotions. It's hardly passive. And you just feel it.
Absolutely, but you're so right. But if we live in a society in which often, it's so dualistic, it's this or that, it's therefore, it's this person's thought, it's good, it's bad, it's right or wrong, that arriving at that point of accepting, sometimes it's not an emotion or a feeling or a thing that people have been invited to that in one's armory. What this is going to bring up is a lot of stuff about where you are in your own self and your own personal, your own spiritual kind of development. And that's important. One of the things that's going to be very, very important is if it is over, if it is irresolvable, if people are going to go their own ways, then you're going to need to go on a journey. And be mindful, of course, there will be practical, there'll be financial, there may be material, and there might well be, and all of those kind of things that will need to be addressed, especially for children and others kind of concerned. But there is going to be a moment where you are going to need to take care of yourself, because you're going to need to address how you are, your own health and well-being. You can't negate yourself. And if there are others, for example, children, you're going to need to be as strong as you can be for their sake as well as your own. I kind of look at these kind of things a little bit like, when, for example, when somebody's pregnant. When somebody's pregnant, you've got to look after yourself in order to look after your unborn child. So you're going to have to really look after your own self, nourish yourself, take care of yourself, get that rest and so on. It may well be extremely difficult, but you've got to take care of yourself. And some people aren't used to taking care of themselves because the focus has always been on somebody else or on the relationship in itself or the family unit or whatever it might well be. But this is going to become a moment where you're going to need to take care of yourself. Sometimes it might also be when in that situation that you've talked about where somebody's left, that there might be a realization also that sometimes actually in some cases that actually this has been something that has been bubbling up for some time, and one or both of the partners haven't acknowledged or accepted that. So again, that can be very difficult when that's had, because sometimes there's those feelings of realizing, actually, you know what, I sensed in my heart, in my spirit, things weren't right. I wasn't happy, or they weren't happy. We weren't discussing it. We weren't able to resolve it at that. But again, being mindful that that's also it, because sometimes we're just not in that space where we can or we feel ready to have those conversations. So I think blaming you it isn't necessarily going to be helpful, and blaming the other beyond the fact of the events that have happened may be of only limited use to you also moving forward and to address the things that you need to address. So I mean, I'm wearing a heart here because I think it's always, you might feel as though you've got a broken heart, but addressing things with good heart and good intention is going to be key for you being able to move forward in your life, because there's still life to be lived.
Yes, there is. I like that. There is still life to be lived. Absolutely. You've mentioned so many things, Rasheed. You've mentioned about, a support system, surrounding yourself with people who are going to be supportive of you. You've talked about accepting the situation, and the acceptance of it will help in moving forward. It doesn't necessarily, cover up the pain and the hurt, but it does help you think, okay, it is happening. It is what it is. Now what? So you take that step forward. And you've mentioned about looking after yourself. And one other thing that you talked about way in the beginning, which I think a lot of people who are just in the cusp of starting the divorce process, is to realize that court is not the only option. Going to a solicitor is a good thing. You get the good advice from a solicitor, but you still have family mediation. You have collaborative law that can help in that situation, Mackenzie friends. So there's a whole lot of other options that people have when they're going through divorce.
Such an important point that you mentioned there, Soila, and I think it's really worth highlighting, just as you have, because often once we hear the word divorce, then often there's a narrative around, okay, battle, court, money, costly, children angry, or what have you, or whatever the scenario is, and whatever the nature of relationships, and all relationships are completely different, and that's part of the beauty of them and the makeup of them. Some people are being married, some people won't have been married, some people it'll be a separate. It's like a divorce. Some people will be, the man and woman. Sometimes every connotation of relationship, and that's part of the magic of it. But also, I think that at that particular point, you're so right to mention that, because there are all these different ways of addressing it. And interestingly, one of the things to say is that one narrative that we don't often hear is that many couples decide that they manage to focus and sort lots of this stuff out themselves, and decide the practicalities. And it might well just be, a little bit of paperwork from a professional to sign the deal.
Yeah.
So it can be worth thinking about. You could probably save yourself a lot of time, money, heartache, and so on, if you can, just for this particular period of time, be civil enough to kind of collaborate, whether you feel you can do that by yourself, or if you feel you need an intermediary. So it doesn't necessarily need to go through the courts. And that can save a lot of people a lot of pain, especially as if there are others involved, or especially if your lifestyle, or if there are things that you don't necessarily want to be dragged through the courts and publicly. So I think that's well worth thinking about. The other thing I want to just flag up at this point is, I would say that be mindful as we begin to then explore the practicalities. I think it can be useful to think about three elements. What is the practical support I need, or the practical issues that need to be addressed? Okay, the house, the this, the kids, the that, the CDs, for those people who still have CDs.
I have CDs.
Exactly. Me too. What's the emotional stuff? Okay, my feelings, their feelings, feelings of others, and so on, family and all that kind of. What's the emotional stuff that needs to be addressed or honoured or acknowledged, and the support that I need? And what perhaps spiritually, with a small s, am I feeling in one's spirit? Or because you may well also have, there may well be that dimension whereby you might actually wrestling with what's in your heart, because in your heart you might be somebody of kindness, caring, and all of a sudden all the other sorts of emotions are brought up. So what is it that's going to nourish you? Whether that's just you spending time in nature, whether it is that you're somebody of faith, or whether it is somebody that you're a humanist, whatever it is that is, I think it can be very useful just to be mindful about what's the practical support and issues, what's the emotional, what's the spiritual, to make sure that you're nourished throughout, because you may well also need the strength, whether it is something that's going to go through the courts, or whether it is something that is just going to be that you deal with yourself, so that you can get the support that it is that you need, that's nourishing to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Rasheed. Now, if anyone wanted to contact you, if somebody was listening to this and they thought, okay, this is where I am and I really need help with moving on from this, spot where, I'm fighting and I'm struggling. I need to be able to move on and move on properly, whether they're male or female, the left or the lever. How can they get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So you can find me, Rasheed Ogunlaru, on my website, which is R for Rasheed, A for Apple, S for Sugar, A for Apple, R for Rasheed, U for Umbrella, Rosaru.com. You can find me, details of me, my coaching services. I also have some books and tools and CDs and talks and video programs, all sorts of things to help people. And if you also Google me, Rasheed Ogunlaru, that's Rasheed, R-A-S-H, double ED. If you type in Rasheed, double ED, Ogunlaru, Ogunlaru, you also find other things like my YouTube channel, which you can also find online. So there's all sorts of tips and tools and support. And I think I want to thank you very much for inviting me here. And I think the last thing I want to just say is that remember that also there will be a moment that sometimes this can be a beginning. That so often with so many relationships in our life, when we look back in retrospect and we think, actually, as nourishing as that was for the time, I'm at a new stage in my life. And it's not to say that every single person involved, you, the other, children if they're involved, might go on to another wonderful, rich chapter. I also believe that nothing ever in life is lost. All those experiences, all those memories, all of the things that you did, they're still alive. They're still very relevant. You might be able to see them within yourself, within the other, within the children, within the things that you've created. Be very grateful for life and this gift of life, and very often that opportunity of moving on will make you stronger. It will make you wiser, and know that you will be ready to love if you open your heart to being loving and kind. Don't let that shut out your emotions towards yourself or others or to life itself. Embrace life. Life will embrace you, and I wish you all the best as you move forward in your life.
Oh, that's a fantastic way to end the interview. I like that. We're ending with the beginning. I quite like that very, very much, because it is absolutely a beginning, and so many people have written about it. Farhana Dalla wrote a book, Thank You for Leaving Me, when her husband left. I interviewed Vina Rampal yesterday, and she said that she's so grateful for her marriage and the divorce, because where she is now, she's in such a good place. So
so common. I know a family law team, a wonderful family law team, and they have an annual celebration. They have experts and contacts, people like myself there. They will have people who've gone, who they've supported. And often you can see many of these people who have flourished afterward, and that feeling of possibility, new beginning. So know that that is possible for you.
Oh, thank you so much, Rasheed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Speak later.
See you soon. Bye. Bye-bye.